With this date, I shall call the meeting to order, Mr. Clerk. Well, you could say and then introduce the CLA. I was just going to get you on the tape. Say hello. Say good morning, Mr. Clerk.
Oh, thank you. Michael Espinoza of the City Clerk.
Yes.
Yes, Christine Yehollis, CLA, Chief Legislative Analyst's Office.
Thank you.
You guys have anything you're interested in other than the knowledge? You have any specials? No. Any specials, Joe?
No.
Okay. Good. Let's proceed. I'd like to first hold number one, but all the others we could do with consent, unless anyone has an objection to that. No objection on these other matters, members?
Second. Move.
Okay, would you call it into the record?
Do you want me to read each item?
Just, yeah, I like that. You could do it 2 through
7.
2 through 7. We're going to do that on consent. We have cards on 2 and 7, so hold everybody else, so do the others. Thank you.
All right, under item 2, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for council approval the First Amendment to the Foreign Trade Zone Operating Agreement with California Cartage Company, which is located at Site 1A, 2401 East Pacific Coast Highway in Wilmington. Under this amendment, the Harbor Department has agreed to exercise the first of 2 one-year renewal options for a total term of 2 years at this point, expiring in May 2015.
Thank you very much. We have one card. Is this Mr. Herman?
Pardon?
Is Mr. Herman?
My name in the card, yes.
Is it Mr. Herman? You're Mr. Herman.
Correct.
Thank you. Please, you get 1 minute. Thank you.
What item are we on, sir?
Number 2.
The Foreign Trade Zone Operating Agreement with California Cartage.
Good morning. We're talking about an exemption, operating agreement with California Cartage Company. It has to do with foreign trade zone. But the question in here to all of you in Los Angeles, and more so to Mr. LaBonge, is under the charter for exemption, is this something that the public would like to understand, that if you inflate an idea by putting an exemption on it, that there's no way that the First Amendment proposed would have some type of conflict of interest here? So keep in mind that it's the taxpayers' exemption that you're trying to exempt, and we, the public, demand clear, lethargic, and appropriate action when you make any exemption when it comes to the taxpayers' well-being. Save 6 seconds for you. Thank you.
No other speakers on the queue. Members, moved by Mr. Bonin, seconded by Mr. Buscaino. So ordered. Next item, called special, is number 7. Mr. Herman.
Under item 7, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for council approval
That's for 1 minute, sir.
First Amendment to the contract with Brule and Share Environmental Management Solutions, Inc. It's a contract for maintenance and support services for the airport noise and operations monitoring system, which is installed at all 3 airports. And this would extend the term by 3 years, would revise the scope of work, would increase compensation authority for the next 3 years, and would make some other technical amendments.
Thank you very much. Mr. Herman.
For the record, the First Amendment to a contract with BRUEL and KJAER Environmental Management Solutions to extend the term and increase funding for maintenance and support services at the airport for noise and operations. Well, I find this very disturbing because, again, shouldn't there always have been an idea or an implementation for maintenance and support? So why should there be an extension of a term of a contract and on top of that to increase funding when whoever this contractor is should have implemented the idea of, hey, I don't have the money for this job. Let's the city of Los Angeles save the taxpayers' money by having a better bid come in, do the same darn job that they can take responsibility for and accountability and have transparency, as opposed to bamboozle those of the public by fraud, abuse, and waste. So in 1 second, you may have it back. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Mr. Buscaino moves, Mr. Bonin seconds, so ordered. Next, we have one public comment card. One public comment card. I'm going to call Mr. Herman right now. One public comment.
2 minutes?
1 minute.
Trade and commerce and tourism. Well, this is public comment, folks, and the truth is, tourism in Los Angeles, you are not safe. You are not safe due to the safety and the reality of safety in our city. Tourism has a small percentage to our deficit, a very small percentage, due to the fact that this city is still in a crisis for a budget. And so with the ceiling and a deficit that you cannot manage appropriately the funds of the taxpayers, I find this an insult that you consider saying that tourism is on a rise when it is not. If you're a tourist and you're visiting Los Angeles, let me tell you for the record, you are not safe. Our failed system of trade and commerce and tourism, I say to you, you are not safe. And Mr. Lajbanj and Mr. Buscaino, excuse me, but I am speaking. Thank you. I only have 5 seconds, and you interrupted me and disrupted my portion. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Sergeant, we just note the tone of the speaker. Thank you so much. Now we're going to item 1.
Did you want me to finish noting the other items?
Correct, yeah, let's do them all those other items.
Okay.
And don't get ahead of yourself there, young man. I want the commissioners up here on either side to introduce the nominees. So
Very
that would be
quickly,
great.
under item 3, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits for approval the second amendment to another foreign trade zone operating agreement, this one with Customs Air Warehouse, which is located just at Site 2, adjacent to LAX in Los Angeles. And this would extend the term for an additional 5 years. Item 4, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for council approval a lease with Kinkishario International. This is for lease of premises located in the city of Palmdale, Site 9, where the lessee wishes to assemble light rail vehicles for the LA County Metropolitan Transit Authority. This lease would have a term of 5 years with one renewal option for an additional 5 years. Under item 5, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits the First Amendment to contract with Turner Construction Company, a contract for construction of LAX Central Terminal Area improvements. This amendment would extend the term by 2 years for a total term of 5 years with no request for increased compensation at this time. And item 6, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for approval a replacement contract with Birdie and Associates, a contract for maintenance and repair services for the computer-aided dispatch system at all 3 airports, which is used by the airport police for a term of 1 year with 2 renewal options for 1 year each. And the CAO has recommended approval of all of those items.
Very good. So we've approved them all, so we thank you for that. And Madam CLA, and then also I just want to remind the Port of Los Angeles to make sure you have the stories of the local newspapers about these trade zones so others could learn about the advanced way in which the port works to increase economic development around the world. So let's have item 1 read into the record. Thank you.
Under item 1, the Board of Harbor Commissioners submits its report and resolution recommending the appointment of Mr. Eugene D. Soroka as Executive Director of the Los Angeles Harbor Department.
Thank you so much. And I have the great ambassador, the President of the Commission, Commissioner Martinez, and Dave Arian, local homeboy made good in San Pedro, and one of the great guys. Commissioner, would you please introduce, because your commission is approved Mayor's recommendation, and just give us a brief about how special of an individual we have here, and then I'll let our nominee speak. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity, and your Board of Harbor Commissioners is really proud to ask you to confirm the nomination of Eugene Soroka to serve as our next Executive Director. Mr. Soroka has more than 20 years' experience as a global maritime executive, someone who is very much interested in broadening his experience beyond the private sector to include the public sector that you know so well, and we, the board feel, that we are very lucky to have this sort of person with this background and commitment stepping forward. So thank you for your consideration. Dave, did you want to say something?
Yeah, we have an opportunity now to really move the port forward in a significant way. When Jardine came in, the port was at a standstill, and she was able to turn it around and get things moving around the environmental issues. But we're now at a point where the industry has fundamentally changed with the new alliances. And if we want the ships to continue to come into LA, we need to refocus on our core, which is our terminals and the industry. And we got the right guy to do it. I've known Gene for a while, and in the past I would sit on the opposite side of the table because he represented management and I represented labor. But I believe that at this time in history, we got the right guy to do what we need to do. All the money we make off containers is the way we can fund our projects in Wilmington, San Pedro, and the harbor area. So, like I say, we got the right guy at the right time, and I think you'll see that in the coming months and years.
Well, thank you very much. You mentioned Dr. Natz, the previous director, who I saw recently, and she endorsed you, which is very nice. So, Eugene, please go forward, and just let you know that 233 years ago, 44 people walked 9 miles from the Mission San Gabriel to form the little Pueblo, Los Angeles, 44 people. And now we're nearly a city of 4 million, but the Port of Los Angeles is so important, water and power is so important, and the Los Angeles International Airport is so important. You're an economic engine, so this is big shoes and big teams to fill, but you're the quarterback for the job, so please express yourself, and then I'll call on my colleagues for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. It's a great privilege to be here today. The Port of Los Angeles is our nation's #1 port, and we need to ensure that it stays that way going down line and into the future. The work around being competitive, efficient, and sustainable is also high on the list. Working even further to ensure that we have great customer relationships, we bring to the community an attentive ear, and work to ensure the financial results of the port are at high levels are all part of what we expect. And to me, it's a great privilege to have this opportunity and the consideration of the Commission in being in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Buscaino is the fine council representative for the 15th District. And please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Soroka, you and I had an opportunity to speak in my office a couple weeks back and had a lengthy discussion on the progress that's being made at the Port of Los Angeles and how much of a tremendous asset it is, not only locally, regionally, worldwide as well. The port, personally, for me, has been an asset. My friends and family work the docks. I'm hoping that ultimately my kids decide to stay in the harbor area, and maybe the port will have an opportunity for them to work at the dock, at the port as well. But we're also finding a way to create a diversified workforce. I want to ask you on the issue of port being a competitive asset. In light of what's happening down south with the Panama Canal, you and I spoke about this at the office. What is your experience in the shipping industry? How is your experience in the shipping industry prepared you to address the issue of competitiveness at the Port of Los Angeles?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think number one and first off, the Port of Los Angeles has always had great foresight into the trending of the industry. Even more so now is that important, as Dave has mentioned. The landscape has changed. The competitiveness of the shipping lines in the industry has changed to the point where looking at other port locations, whether they be on the Pacific side, Atlantic, or the 2 canals that are being used today, we need to stay ahead of the game. The Panama Canal could be an asset to the Port of Los Angeles to enhance trade with the east coast of South America. Making sure we also have competitiveness on land-based transportations through partnerships with the Western railroads will be of paramount importance to us going down line as well. Watching the Suez Canal and the growth to the east coast of the United States is also something we have to keep a very laser focus on from here on out to ensure that we have our fair share of cargo moving through here and that the competitive lines want to come here because of the service that we provide.
With the recent 2020 report on, it seems like we're competing more with Long Beach than anyone else around the country. And the 2020 report indicated the need to merge both ports, which we all struggle with. Finding ways of mutual benefit with the Port of Los Angeles, what are your thoughts on that?
I've read the report in detail. The work between the two ports is competitive. There is no question about that, and the steamship line community sees it as just that way as well. There are areas that can be worked on together with respect to the environment, the fluidity of cargo flow, and efficiencies coming down line as well. But to work even deeper on pulling the two ports together, I think we need to do a little more research in that area and have more discussions after willingly I am placed into the position.
We are joined by Commissioner Patty Castellanos. Thanks for joining us, Commissioners. And to all of our Commissioners, thank you for putting forth an incredible nominee. And I want to shift to the environment. What I've found, born and raised in San Pedro, living on Alma, overseeing a nice view of the port today is soaring with cranes. When we talk about the environment, and Dr. Natz came in, as Commissioner Arian indicated, with a push to reduce emissions, which the port has done on a voluntary basis of reduction of NOx and SOx over 80%. We're looking at cleaner air, cleaner water, which is an incredible accomplishment with the Port of Los Angeles, and we owe a debt of gratitude to continuing to reduce emissions. I have family and friends who suffer from asthma as well. Give me your thoughts on the importance of expanding the port, expanding it in a green way, and you look at the AMP program, you look at the Clean Air Action Plan as well that's before us and continues to move forward. Your thoughts on continuing to reduce emissions, the port being a good neighbor in addressing the environmental issues. How do we continue that effort by growing green and are continuing to reduce emissions at the Port of Los Angeles?
To answer your question in brief, it's imperative. The work that the Port of Los Angeles and the Commission has done to this date on the environment has been nothing short of sensational, but there is more work to do. The Clean Air Action Plan, as you recommend, also has some targets and metrics downlined by 2023 to be even more detailed and show greater reductions than we have seen today. Alternative marine power is something that my previous company had worked very diligently on to ensure that at least 50% of all ships calling the state of California had the cold ironing capability. Zero emissions type work as well, alternative fuels for truck-based transportation, things that we have to look at very closely. So to go forward and continue to be as assertive as possible in this area is of paramount importance.
Appreciate that answer. And lastly, for me, colleagues, you've heard me say around the horseshoe that the Port of Los Angeles is the #1 container port in the country, but it needs to be the #1 people port as well. We need not only move cargo, but we need to move people to address the tourism, making sure that the port is a not only #1 destination for cargo, but for people as well. And I've said that I believe we're the last standing major port that's not an attraction. That, for me, is a priority moving forward in my time of office, and I know Mayor Garcetti shares that same priority. Give me your thoughts on how you think the port can continue to play a role in ensuring that the LA waterfront becomes a destination for not only locals, but also visitors across the country, across the state.
It's a good question, and as we discussed, I was very encouraged by reading the port's long-term strategic plan. And you remember on that one page with the bubble charts, right? The center focus is the cargo and transportation aspect and movement of our goods through the port, which allows us to begin discussions around research, tourism, retail, etc. So by building upon that, taking into account the fact that I have to meet a lot of stakeholders and learn a lot from those folks around who can give good advice, will take us down a path where we can understand better how best to move forward with the overall strategic plan.
In 2012, the port identified the LA Waterfront Alliance as the developer for the Ports of Call 30 acres redevelopment. quite frankly, and I've shared this with you, I'm not too thrilled about, been frustrated with how the process is coming along with the ongoing negotiations. I know it's still the ENA process. The port has done an incredible job. They have a wealth of knowledge of moving cargo. We know that. But when it comes to retail commercial, I think the port lacks the experience. What are your thoughts of perhaps, I feel you're going to get confirmed once you're in as our port director, of naming a director that's going to focus on retail commercial economic development like you have up north in the Port of San Francisco?
Yeah, another good question. I think first off, as soon as our scheduling will allow, I will get together with the Commission and we'll lay out our program for not only review of what has taken place to date, but also begin to develop our business plan going down line. That will also involve a review of the organization, the stakeholder community, and how we need to prioritize our initial meetings to get in front of folks who have an interest in discussing business with us. So it's going to be very important to amass all that knowledge as quickly as possible and take the good guidance from the Commission going forward.
Thank you. Again, my thanks and gratitude to the Commission as well, Ambassador, under your leadership in putting forth a nominee here who has the skills and knowledge, the abilities to move the port and not only on the container but also moving people through our Port of Los Angeles. And I respectfully ask for an aye vote in committee, and looking forward to working with you, Mr. Soroka, and the entire port family.
Thank you. Mr. Bonin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, you've got Mr. Buscaino and Mr. Arian both recommending you, so now you're highly suspect to me. I wanted to ask you a question about workers and about jobs. You're familiar enough with the area. You know, the port is absolutely central to life and to economic activity in San Pedro. It is, you know, the employer for so many and the employer of so many who are multiplied out into other professions. Automation is changing the nature of our ports, and it's changing the nature of employment. I think it's clear automation is coming. How do we as a city, how do we as a port deal with that so that the port is still a source of good jobs, and what can we be doing to retrain those folks whose jobs are at risk?
Yeah, that's a central topic in our industry. The labor agreement today between the International Longshoremen's Warehouse Union and the employers or the terminal operators in the South Harbor has specific language around the advocacy of this type of work, making sure that the partnerships are together so all stakeholders have a voice in the program going forward is of extreme importance as well. Making sure that there are training opportunities, et cetera, as you allude to, is also very important. I think from my side of the desk today on the steamship line business, we've seen some good work in this area, and there's much more to do. And if you'll allow me just a little bit of time once I get into the chair to work with the Commission on some further plans, I know that Dave has done some very good work and making sure that we have traction in this area. So I look forward to working in that area because, for obvious reasons, the port is an engine of the economy, and to create jobs and better lives for folks is what we need to do.
We'll give you a good week and a half before you have to come up with something.
Outstanding. Thanks.
You mentioned the size of our port. We're big. But big doesn't always mean best.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a lot of experience with the industry. Whether it's retraining workers, whether it's being more sustainable and environmentally friendly, what are the other ports that you see that are doing things that might be best practices for us to learn from in either of those fields or others?
Yeah, you just hit on the exact terminology, the best practice concept. And Councilman, that's the idea of making sure that we're humble enough to look around us and see who's doing things a little bit better, who has some good ideas to share, whether they be here in our local community or at far-reaching locations, and being able to compare those to our own. We've witnessed some great productivity gains due to partnership with labor and training, the ability to have better standard practices with respect to pedestal turns and the turns of traffic in our containers. And we've also seen the ability to create an employer of choice concept that would allow us to drive jobs and have folks want to work with us. So there's a lot of work to do in this area, but being aware and having a little bit of a perspective that I do with more than half of my career spent overseas, I think I could bring some of those ideas, but more importantly, can bring some of those contacts that can share their expertise with us on how to move those steps forward.
I represent a part of the city on the west side that surrounds a couple smaller cities, Santa Monica and Culver City, and I often get to see, because they're smaller and more agile, they do economic development better, so they have more money for services. So I often say, damn, I'd like to do what Santa Monica's doing, or heck, I'd like to do what Culver City is doing. Is there a port that you look at that is the greenest port in America that has examples that we should be following?
It's very difficult to compare Los Angeles with anybody in that area right now. As I mentioned moments ago, that the work that's been done on the environmental side is about as best in class as we see today. And in fact, we even have other countries now ready and committed to signing agreements, and recently have signed agreements to work with us on eco-environment principles and concepts. So we will be leading edge. And again, if we can put that into the community, that will help us as well develop our brand even further than we are today.
Mr. Buscaino asked about the 2020 Commission report and about the nature of relationship with the ports of Long Beach. I know you said you're going to sort of work on that issue a bit. My read is I don't think that there's a political reality I can imagine where the two ports actually merge, and that the side-by-side competitiveness is something that's going to continue and be built in. As the two ports grow, and as the two ports develop their own strategies, their own improvements, do you see there being sort of a brand difference at all between what Long Beach does and what we do? Is there a different type of service at all that we provide that they don't, or that they have a different niche than we do?
Yeah, as stated earlier, I have read the report. I think there are areas today that can be worked on and enhanced, such as work around the environment, emissions, clean air. I have no comment at this juncture on merging the two ports. Again, let's see what happens when I get into the office the first day and start learning. But at the same time, the differentiation between the ports, because of their geographic proximity, is the number one item that we have on our list, to make sure that we are world-class in customer service, that our brand is differentiated through that ease of doing business and wanting to bring more business into the Port of Los Angeles. Today, in fact, the port will have its first 13,000 TEU vessel calling, which is a big deal in the industry. It will be the largest vessel to call in the South Harbor. The reason that's done is because the employees and employers alike have the zest to make it happen. The infrastructure is in place, and the ability to have those relationships already on board to work to bring that type of vessel in is all statement of fact that we can differentiate very strongly, and there'll be more work to do in that area. But with the geographic proximity, and we've seen this in many other locations, whether it was my time in the Middle East or in Southeast Asia, we've seen that differentiation has to start with the people, the leadership, and the strategy, and I believe we can do that.
Thank you. Despite your dubious references, I'll be voting in favor.
Thank you. Commissioner Castellano, I know you joined us. You want to take a minute just to say a few words?
I won't take up much time. I know we need to get downstairs for the final vote, but we, highly recommend Mr. Soroka, Gene, to this position. He was very impressive, which is why he's here. And I think the reason for it, although he has lots of experience in this industry, a knowledge and an openness to really embrace all the stakeholders and the varying interests, which sometimes appear to be competing interests at the harbor, but I think that we've, as a port, done a good job of balancing them, and I think he does bring that equanimity and openness to working with the stakeholders and continuing to make us the best port, the most environmentally friendly port, and I think a port that works for our community and provides jobs. So we look forward to his confirmation today.
Thank you very much, and I just wanted to add a few things too. I greatly support Alta-C and the work that's done to create that. The universities in Southern California are so important. I'm very supportive of Mr. Buscaino as someone who lives there, grew up there, and all that he could assist in this area here. And also I'm very supportive of Congresswoman Hahn, chair of the United States Port Caucus, that's put focus on ports throughout the country. I think the port high school is real important. Harbor College is real important. Harbor Occupation Center, LA Unified, all those variety of educational institutes and to support that, which is key. I also think the railroads, as you mentioned, opening are so important. I remember when I first started here 38 or years ago, there's a guy named Mike McKelvey. I don't know if anybody remembers Mike McKelvey, and he was the secretary to the Board of Public Works that had a problem with the railroad. And he said, Tom, the railroad goes from here to Topeka. If they help you, they're going to have to help Topeka. They don't want to help, they're very focused on doing their mission in between those rails. But there's more that they have to do, and so it's important to work in that excellent area. And I like what you said about the opportunity with the canal, because it goes both ways. We could grab things in that way as we go forward. I like your administration building. It was designed by John Warnke. He played for Pop Warner at Stanford. He is a great architect, and he designed President Kennedy's memorial at Arlington, a very special architect who is a wonderful man. He's in heaven now, but I like that. And I just wanted to thank all of you for what you're doing here. And the tourism industry is really important. We talked about it briefly in our meeting, which is so important to look to that and to connect. Even, I think people want to see Rio. I have the Hollywood area. People don't want to see Rio. They want to get to it. So I think we could maybe promote a cruise from Vancouver on the coast. People want to see the coast when it's not foggy on the right time of the year. Maybe we could develop some of that. Business is most important, but this is another area to look at. And I just want to thank you for this and ask you to look over your left shoulder, because look over your left shoulder right now. There's a great team of people who have many years of city service who have great concern, and put that team in focus is going to make the city a better place. So we all recommend you. We thank you. I have 2 public comment cards, so you could go back to your seat before we take the vote.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Mr. Herman?
Good morning, and thank you, Mr. Eugene Soroka, if I pronounce
Address the chair, please.
I am the Executive Director for the Los Angeles Harbor Department. We know that you don't have kiddie porn, and we know you're going to do a heck of a job at that port to increase a friendly atmosphere for all of us stakeholders. Yes, you're going to significantly impact us with competitive jobs that we can participate in. For many stakeholders wish to acquire jobs that are not open to the public, general public people, the simple people, we the hardworking people. So stakeholders, what is our interest? Our interest is that we have conduct that is one that can stand up, that will be appropriate, one that is an action for the people, one that will improve our quality of life in San Pedro and the harbor so I don't have to die from asthma, like Joe pointed out. And at the same point, as Mr. Bonin pointed out, we don't want to see blight in the San Pedro area. Thank you.
Next speaker, Ms. Grubbs.
Please. Thanks, Glenn.
Good morning, Chairman Labange, Councilman Buscaino, and Bonin. My name is Michelle Grubbs. I'm the Vice President of the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association, and PMSA members represent marine terminal operators, ocean carriers, and other maritime interests on the West Coast. I'm here today to support the nomination of Gene Soroka to the Executive Director of the Port of Los Angeles. Gene joins the Port of Los Angeles with extensive contacts and relationships throughout the supply chain that include ocean carriers, rail lines, trucking companies, cargo owners, which span the world. In today's hyper-competitive business environment, choosing Gene is a clear affirmation that the Port of Los Angeles is customer-focused and committed to retaining the #1 position as the largest container port in the U.S. I would like to thank the Mayor, Ambassador Martinez, and Vice President Arian for their open and transparent process they did. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And would you please sit back at the chair, our nominee? So could I have a motion? Mr. Buscaino moves.
Move to approve
Mr. Bonin seconds.
the nomination.
Let's call a roll call vote.
Mr. Buscaino,
I vote yes.
Mr. Bonin,
Aye.
Mr. Labange.
Absolute aye. So ordered. All right, on to council. Congratulations. And Sergeant, just want to let you know, Don Canavi's the county supervisor for the area, and he'd love to meet you. I just was with him over the county building, so there's your first official card on the way. We'll see you in council. Thank you, everybody.
Meeting's adjourned.